This is a super exciting topic for me, having experienced the metaverse before. And if you have experienced it, you will know that it's a big deal. And on the panel, as Tommaso just mentioned, we have Rehana from the Commission, who is going to talk about what was, I think, the first regulatory initiative from anywhere in the world on the virtual worlds. And we also have on the panel Juliana from Qualcomm, who will give us an overview of what the metaverse means from the infrastructure perspective. And then we have Hugo from Institute on New Economy to talk about the more important, but also to some extent philosophical aspects of this very interesting topic. So what is the metaverse? This is the big question that we are all grappling with since the announcement from Meta, but also since many years when this sector has been developing throughout. And I think this year, McKinsey came out with a report that said it's already worth 120 billion, the metaverse economy, in 2023, and this could even rise to 5 trillion in 2030. And that's a big number. So I'm very happy to sort of introduce this panel and try to have a debate on what are the policy aspects of the metaverse, what is it, what is the rationale for the Commission to introduce this communication in July. And so the first question, Rehana, is to you. Thank you for being here. And so the Commission came out with its first communication in July this year, which was super exciting. So I guess the first question is, what were the main goals and the rationale for the Commission to come out with this communication? And what are your thoughts of what's the next steps? Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gautam. So, yeah, I'm speaking you through Zoom. We're not there, in meeting on the metaverse or in virtual worlds as we, we chose to call this initiative. By way of introduction, so my name is Rehana Schwinninger-Ladak, and I'm the head of unit in charge of the strategy of the Commission. So it is not a regulatory initiative, as you said, and I want to insist on that. It is a strategy. So the Commission chose, because we have already a number of forward-looking legislation, such as the Data Act, such as the GDPR, the AI Act, which is coming. The Commission chose to have a non-legislatory or a non-regulatory approach, which is to look at the opportunities, look at the risks, and have a balanced, I think, approach in relation to what is coming out there. So, as you said, 2 months ago, we presented a strategy, a new strategy, which is called. It's quite a long name. We like long titles. So it's called a new initiative on Web 4 and virtual world, a head start in the next technological transition. So the rationale and the idea behind that is that we're not looking at the metaverse hype, but we are really looking at a much more long-term perspective, Web 4, of which virtual worlds are an important component. So beyond the hypes, what we are looking at, it's a wider, deeper technological transition, which will allow a seamless connection between people and machine and machine, and have this, a seamless real-time feedback, bringing the different technologies which are at play. And the strategy of the Commission is really anchored in the idea that these developments, they must reflect EU values and principles, and they have to respect EU legislation to ensure that people are safe, confident, and empowered when it comes to their rights as consumers, as workers, as creators, as young people, as vulnerable people who want to make the most of this virtual world. And also because of the balanced approach between empowering and protecting, nurturing the different segments of society, this initiative is also aimed at supporting and nurturing an environment for the European industry where businesses can develop world-leading applications and where they can scale up and grow. So it is very much a kind of industrial approach to virtual worlds to say, okay, we need to make sure that we have the base, the technological base, but also how can we create the conditions to bring together the ecosystem for a healthy virtual world and leading to Web4 industry. And this is really the rationale behind the 4 strands of actions that we have in the strategy. So I won't go into the details of the actions, but simply the 4 pillars. So the first one is around empowering people and reinforcing the skills, because we are all very much aware of the skills gap that we are all facing across the globe. And this is all the more acute because for virtual worlds, we're speaking about very specific skills, but also multidisciplinary skills. It's also all the creative aspects that are needed. So first block is empowering people and skills. The second block of actions is about about the actions to support industrial ecosystem to scale up excellence in R&D and innovation. So very much industrial R&D focused. The third pillar is about societal progress and virtual public services, because we know that governments can also be important, vehicles to pull innovations. So on the one hand, how can we make sure that we are bringing in governments? And at the same time, how can we develop public services to improve the life of citizens, to make public services more personalized, closer to the citizens? And the last part, which is an important one, which is about governance at EU level. So how do we bring all the member states together to make sure that we don't have fragmentation in the internal market? As the Commission, one of our objectives is also to make sure that everybody is on board and that all member states can benefit from the potential which is out there. So on the one hand, governance within the EU, but at the same time, we are not an island. And we are very much, in a global movement. So what are the global standards which are necessary for open and interoperable virtual worlds? And that is very important for us to make sure that we are not reproducing the errors of the past, where we will have a number of small gatekeepers who can block the entry for smaller players. So this is in a nutshell, the strategy. Now, what's next? Well, next is to implement, those actions, because they are quite complicated. And as we will be implementing those actions, we will be learning about the gaps, for future actions. So it's starting now. It is a long-term transition, and I believe we will have, many more conversations and many more, follow-ups coming up.
That's really great. And I think I must congratulate you in terms of being forward-looking in that sense, because it is very difficult to try to, come up and articulate a strategy so early on in a foundational technology like this. It also, the approach that you took is very holistic in a sense, because you're thinking about the 4 pillars, and that sort of leads me to the next panelist, because from whatever I understand about the metaverse, there are several layers in the metaverse, and each layer of the metaverse has very different actors. And each of these actors have to sort of come together as well. And so part of the role of the regulatory agencies is to create those conditions, as you very, very nicely put. And so we have on the panel a very important industry player that is part of one of the core layers of the metaverse, which is the infrastructure layer. This is the layer where you just have the devices that you access the metaverse in, but also the networks, the chipsets, the technology that underlies what is the metaverse economy. So I'm very curious to hear from Juliana. So what is Qualcomm's vision for this infrastructure layer of the metaverse economy? And what is the outlook of the technology according to you?
Thank you, Gautam. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, now it's better. Yeah, thank you. So thank you for the invite to speak about virtual worlds today. And Qualcomm is super excited about the strategy the Commission has published, actually, and the action items. Because now I think it's the right time, and it's an early stage to discuss how to proceed when it comes to virtual worlds and to make it a success. Um, Qualcomm is known as an innovator and a developer for leading technologies, and we've been into 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and future 6G, and with our wireless systems and technology. And we've expanded our portfolio into the horizontal business as well. And today you can find us in smartphones, cars, and in the environment of Industry 4.0. And when it comes to virtual worlds, we started our activity several years ago when we started developing our XR Snapdragon chipset. We've been creating these virtual experiences for XR, VR, and mixed reality as well. And I would like to give a bit more overview on what we are doing and what we've done besides the development of the XR chipsets. So we started actually investing 100 million US dollars on our Snapdragon Metaverse Fund to support developers and manufacturers to work on XR applications. And we've seen that Europe is the right environment to push forward the vision of virtual worlds. And that's why we opened several hubs across Europe, including in Spain, in France, Austria, and in the Netherlands. And we've hired high talented engineers to work on R&D activities around gesture control, 3D mapping and meshing, as well as on hand tracking and object tracking as well. And additionally, and here I would like to come back to the European Commission's vision, because we are here on the same page. So Qualcomm fully supports this open, interoperable, and interconnected vision of virtual worlds. And that's why we've created a single, open, and cross-device platform called Snapdragon Spaces, where developers and manufacturers, and it doesn't matter if you're a big company or a smaller company, you can use our Snapdragon Spaces platform to work on applications. And this is something, in my opinion, which is pretty unique because we want to have this full ecosystem working. And we want to have cooperation with the whole industry, which is super important in this aspect as well. And now you can find our platforms in over 60 devices. You can find us in Meta, Lenovo, Snap, etc. and etc. But that's not all, because we can talk about technology, we can talk about the infrastructure, we can talk about seamless access for anyone at any time, etc. But I mean, the really important point when we talk about virtual worlds are the advantages. And the advantages can be found on the industry side, but as well for the society. And we've been working closely with several players globally on specific use cases. And you can find already our chipset in, I can give you just one example, which I think is really a good one. And I'm happy to elaborate further on this one on the next round. So the hospitals, university in Austria, they are using our chipsets for a newborn ventilation project. And so it helps newborns to help them breathing, etc., which is like a very great project, actually. And I can give you more examples for education, culture, for the cultural area as well, or criminal investigation, etc. and etc.
This is a good point for me to interject and also say that the metaverse economy is fundamentally such a new construct, and it requires some of the interoperability that you were speaking of. It also requires different standards. It requires different agreements between industry players to come together and try to define what are the right conditions for which use case. And what you were mentioning, I mean, certainly there are use cases where presence, for example, or persistence, or being in the metaverse at all times is an essential component of that use case, versus in other cases there could be, more augmented reality use cases that are also based on the same infrastructure. This also leads me to this question on digital assets, and this is for you, Hugo. I've always wondered, what does it mean to own something in the metaverse, right? Because fundamentally, value, something derives value from a lot of things, but fundamentally also scarcity. And given that you're in a metaverse where, there's infinite possibilities, let's say, how does one begin to start owning assets on the metaverse? And could you shed some light about this dichotomy? And I'm really curious to know how should not just industry but also citizens experience being owners in the metaverse, and would that be different in some way to being owners in the real world?
Yeah, definitely. It can be many things eventually. And ownership is a social construct in the end, derived from society's views on how assets should be used. And different countries have their own rules to govern property, and digital property so far has also their own rules. And the metaverse can bring several different alternatives on how can this play. There was the issue of scarcity that you mentioned, and given this is the Blockchain for Europe's summit, we have the very interesting use case of NFTs as a way to a certain extent, of course, a very limited one, to create a barrier to the duplication of an asset. Of course, it can be copy-pasted, but at least on that specific registry, it should be, to a certain extent, unique. But that needs to be backed by then that societal construct, that underlying framework from the jurisdiction that clarifies what property is. Otherwise, maybe you can have a copy of your art on the blockchain, but if you can't, well, you can always transact it peer-to-peer, but if that art doesn't really represent the art, or if we go into more of the topic of tokenization, if that NFT doesn't really represent the real estate, then that creates a complication. And if we are talking about Europe, certain countries may allow through their civil codes for this tokenization to be more seamless, but others will have very specific definitions of what land means, of what real estate means, of what an immovable asset means. And in that context, there may be a very clear obstacle that could be very well addressed through regulation, even though this is still not a legislative initiative, and that's good that it is like that for the moment. But in the future, it will be critical to ensure that there's this harmonized understanding in the European Union about what ownership means also in the digital world, especially when we're talking about like the ownership of the real important stuff. If we're talking about the ownership of collectibles in a video game, that's kind of immaterial for what the supposed potential of the metaverse could be. And going back to your conversation about that McKinsey report, it's nonetheless interesting. And also going back to the fact that we have Qualcomm here in the room with Juliana, that famously McKinsey in the 90s mistakenly predicted that the telecom market, specifically the mobile telecom market, will be relevant, and recommended Ericsson to not pursue any development in that space. And now, even before the metaverse is a thing, is saying that in 2030, the metaverse is going to be worth 300 or whatever billions. At the same time, it's very funny, at least when this panel started, that I counted roughly 45% of the audience to perhaps be right now located in the metaverse. Because going also back to the definition of the metaverse that Tommaso was saying, and there's this incoherence between definitions that abounds in the literature and in the common understanding of what this is. But let's assume that these virtual worlds are what they are. So like this digital, seamless blend between the physical and the digital, which creates this very nice experience in which people can interact with the augmentation that everyone knows that digital brings. And then the metaverse is just like the collection, the constellation of the various virtual worlds, be them games, be them work platforms, be them health platforms, be them industrial projects. Many virtual worlds can exist. Some are more like tools, like the doctors using the metaverse to train surgeries. That's kind of a tool. That's not a virtual world in and of itself. It's kind of a virtual space, a cyberspace.
Right.
But then if we're talking about the game where an economy naturally emerges because people demand to experience that game because it gives them pleasure and they want to buy stuff in that game, then that's more of an economy. And then as these different worlds and experiences interact with each other and people jump from one to another, then something bigger can emerge. But also at the same time, that something has already emerged, because right now in this room, many of you were, at least until recently, in your phones or in your laptops, totally immersed in the content you were reading. Yes, the interface was a screen, a stupid rectangle that's shining blue light into you, but your minds were focused on what you're reading. You were not listening to what was being said here. I was at least doing that moments ago, and I wasn't
So to come
focused.
to come to this point, I was listening in the previous panel, and they were talking about very interesting stuff on identity, and I think that that's super relevant in this case because people are having different experiences which need to be authenticated somehow to ensure that you know who the person is behind their avatar, for example, or you have some accountability mechanisms for a certain experience that goes awry. And so I think the question now is to Rehana and also potentially to Juliana on this point on where is this metaverse legislative initiative that ties up the existing digital legislation. So you have EIDAS coming up. You have a lot of digital platform regulation that's been finalized already. And so for the next commission, what do you think are the missing pieces that need to be tied up? I know I don't want to put you on the spot and try to say what the next commissioner would do, but it would be nice to have at least an indication of what should the European Union think about when they're thinking about this legislative framework that brings together the metaverse economy, and specifically to do with identity. And you mentioned your 4 pillars. They're actually spot on because you have skills, you have the actions that are needed from an industrial perspective, so the financing essentially, but then you also have the social concerns articulated clearly, like the cybersecurity risks, the privacy risks, but also the behavioral risks, which we don't really understand or know. Interestingly, our think tank, the Center on Regulation in Europe, came out with a report exactly about this, which Rehana, you're aware of, so I will just quickly show it.
It's a good one.
It's a good one because it tries to tease out these issues, and I would just love to hear a few words about what you think where should we go next, or what are the key pieces that are missing?
Well, Gautam, I mean, you will not hear from me today, what's coming next in terms of legislation, simply because let's see first, how the legislation that we have that is just going to kick in,
Right.
how it kicks in and where will be the gaps, because as you know, any basis for sound policymaking is evidence, it's data. So let's look at, the gaps that the AI Act will have, and that might take a few years. The same goes with Data Act, the same for digital identity. So it's just a bit too early to say that, However, one of the actions that we are calling for, which is very interesting, and it is in the continuation of what Hugo just said, it's about all the NFTs. What we know is that there's a lot of uncertainties in relation to NFTs. The NFTs do not provide you a lot of certainty in relation to copyright aspects, in relation to, for instance, even taxation. When you look at member states, they have not taken a position in terms of VAT relating to NFTs. So if we look at NFT, there's a whole avenue, in terms of legislating how NFTs can provide a more secure and confident space for everyone to engage in. But it's just an example. So one of the actions we will have, it's the regulatory sandboxes.
Right.
And regulatory sandboxes are very interesting because it allows to bring in regulators upstream so that they can better understand, where the gaps are, and it allows also industry to work upstream with the regulators. So we will be using the sandboxes also to have a bit of orientation.
No, that's super helpful. I think that makes a lot of sense because, as you said, it's very nascent, and I would just like to also pick on this point on creating the right conditions, and I think that is really important given where we are in the cycle for the metaverse, right, as a technology. And so this one is for Juliana. Where do you think industry has a role to play to ensure that this interoperability comes up, and to ensure that there is the right collaboration between the different stakeholders, and what is required from your perspective, from the Commission, to achieve this?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I would like to add that I fully agree with Rehana and the European Commission. So I mean, we have a lot of regulatory frameworks coming up on cyber security, etc. So for now, we really don't need additional legislation at this early stage. So I'm glad to hear that from Rehana as well. So I mean, we can talk about the usual lags or known lags, which are really the basis to make virtual worlds a success. And yes, we can talk about the 5G rollout. We can talk about 5G millimeter wave for dense areas. This is the basis. But when we talk about the collaboration and perhaps R&D efforts or funding opportunities, this could be actually a hook for industry players which haven't been involved so far.
Right.
So as I mentioned, we are doing our part with our Snapdragon platform. But I mean, I think that as the Commission is seeking to flourish this expert group again, this is the first right step to bring all players together to sit on a table and to discuss how we proceed with an open, interoperable metaverse. I think this is key. And I'm seeing it in different member states. So for example, in Germany, we have a similar expert group, and Rehana has been there as well recently at the Ministry of Digital Affairs, and we talked about it. But this is key. And what I'm seeing now is that we need probably to have a push. So to push a bit the member states to become more actively involved,
Right.
because I think it's not primarily linked to the industry. We are excited about the topic and we want to see it in reality. And I mean, this is something
This
which
is
could be.
this is a great point, and I think we are running out of time, so we're going to hit the last issue, I think, which is a core issue of this topic, which is the money and the financing. Is it enough? Do we have the right financing structures in place? What do you think, Hugo? Do you think we are investing enough in this economy?
I think we are totally aligned here. Like the strategy or the vision is good. I would say that there's still not a strategy, but the vision is good. The industry is somewhat happy with it. It's a good first step, but it lacks what it needs. And the thing about interoperability is that you can wish interoperability, but it will only come if the people who believe in interoperability and in open systems build it first.
Right.
Than the big American tech giants or the big Asian tech giants that will just come and build a closed system because it creates a better mode for them to capture the economic opportunity there. And because Europe fortunately has this ethos of being a decentralized union of 27 member states and of wanting to be a leader in this new Web 4, this future generation of the internet that should finally aim to deliver its original intent. But it will only be able to achieve that if it pours billions into its universities and sustains its industrial fabric in ways that are more powerful than the ones that China is already doing or that America is already doing. Why aren't we investing in our own like native or national or European like chip production? Why are our universities not world leaders in this field? Where's the like the really united capital market that allows the 27 countries to really have a single unified pool of talent and pool of startups to breathe and cross-pollinate the actual use cases that may come in the future out of this very emergent industry. Because this is like the metaverse is this meme, but it's like we are in the early days of the telegraph. We are still interacting through the metaverse in ways that are similar to just the beeps of the telegraph, or even the early days of radio. Then the video came and killed the radio star. Something will come and kill the stupid goggles of the VR dystopia of the metaverse. And maybe we'll live in a better metaverse that is really immersive through, for example, holograms or any other kind of experience that doesn't force us to be glued to screens, be them mobile phones or be them goggles. But we need something better than that, and for that we need money.
No, absolutely. And it sounds to me like there is a case to be made to try to create a new single market to some extent.
At least we need
on the metaverse.
At least we need more concrete steps in terms of like having that harmonization of the legislation in terms of property rights, the true harmonization of the talent. Of course, Europe is mobile, but still not as mobile as the United States, for example.
Absolutely. So we are running out of time, so I'm going to open up for questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question, please? Please say your name and your organization before.
Hello? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm Martin Schmalzri. I work for Humanity, which is a consultancy. I was just wondering, you were talking about interoperability. How do you see AI fitting into the picture? Because with those kind of tools, you don't necessarily have to harmonize everything. These tools can actually make the match or convert things on the fly between one metaverse and the other. Thank you.
That's a great question. Does someone want to take that? Rehana, maybe you go. Can you go first?
Yeah. So as you mentioned earlier, Gautam, the virtual worlds. I'm going to stick to the terminology that we have put forward in the strategy. So virtual worlds depend a lot on these different layers, that need to come together. And when you look at those layers, indeed, the technological layer is a huge one, because we're not speaking about just one technology. We're speaking about a number of different technologies. Because I'm also responsible for the whole AR, VR part, the extended reality technologies. So when you look at that, when you look at AI, for each technologies, you do have interoperability, which is at the heart of it. But then again, this interoperability has to also take place within the sectors which are responsible. So you have this vertical interoperability, but then you have also across platforms and most importantly across networks. So it is quite a complicated topic. I think we're starting into it, and in the research innovation, the R&D that we are going to fund, interoperability is going to be really a key part of it. And one of the actions, which is the partnership, we're going to see how we can form a partnership on the Horizon Europe, which is our R&D program. There we are also going to address the interoperability aspects for virtual. So this is not a very precise answer, but it's just to say that it is at the heart of the issue, and it is all the more complex because we're also dealing with different kinds of technological interoperability.
And I mean, just to add one more point, which is that the AI Act is primarily use case driven. It's technology neutral. And I think that is a key point to reiterate in all European digital legislation. So it does have to work together, and it is very important, as you mentioned. We are out of time, but I think we can take one more question, if there's someone in the audience. Yes?
Hi, Valentino Grassi from Triligent, a consultancy. Yeah, my question is once again for the Commission, because I'm a bit intrigued by the choice of wording in terms of using the term virtual worlds. Because I mean, we talked a lot about collaboration between member states, but also with like-minded partners internationally. So I'm more wondering why this choice that sets a difference between other international players, since other national metaverse strategies in South Korea and also other countries like Saudi Arabia, they chose the wording metaverse. So is this something that's gonna complicate the collaboration efforts in terms of international standards if the Commission has chosen a different wording?
So before Rehana answers that, I would like to say that I prefer virtual worlds over metaverse, just because it sounds more comprehensive.
Yeah,
But
less dystopian as well.
but it is a very interesting topic, because what is the difference? What is the definition?
Like the
And-
current consensus is that the plural virtual worlds equals the metaverse. The metaverse is
Exactly.
the constellation of the virtual worlds.
So that would be my answer as well. But Rehana, please feel free to shed some light on the
Well,
terms.
It's as I said in the beginning, we just wanted to go beyond certain hypes, certain tech hypes, and just look at the wider technological transition. So the choice that was done, following many conversation, it's really to look at the long-term perspective, and
Right.
what does virtual world means in societal use cases, in industrial, but also for leisure. So yeah. It's the choice that the Commission made.
Yeah, but it's a more technically correct choice, because many people say, "Oh, I'm building a metaverse," or "I'm going to experiment this new metaverse." That doesn't make sense through the
Right.
definition of meta and verse. Like
Makes
it's the overall universe.
And on that note, I think we are at the end of our panel. So I would like to thank our panelists once again for a very exciting discussion, and I'm very excited to see what the new Commission has in store on this topic as well, because I think that this is the beginning of the story, and there's a lot more to be seen and done. So on that note, thank you all. Thank you, panelists, and hopefully see you soon.